Hello. Happy day to you. So today we're going to look at Math 7 notes for Lesson 7-1, scale drawings. So we're going to jump right into it because why not? I'm not in the habit of wasting your time. So a scale drawing is either a reduced, making something smaller, a reduced, or an enlarged 2D image of an original. We're going to leave some empty parentheses there. We're going to come back and fill something in later. Of an original figure. Okay, so 2D. 2D. 2D standing for two dimensions. And when we talk about those two dimensions is just another fancy name for like your length and your width, or your side lengths. Your side. So your length and your width. Okay, so as we talked about, there are two different types of scale drawings. There is the first type of a scale drawing where you take something and you reduce it, which would be called a reduction. And you're reducing something, or like reducting, like to reduct, that means to make smaller. An example of this where you're taking something and making it smaller would be like blueprints. When you're talking about building a building or something, you're taking something larger, or even just a house, you're taking something larger and you're condensing it, or you're reducing it down to fit on a piece of paper so you can plan it. So we've got reductions, or the other type is an enlargement. And an enlargement, as I'm sure you can put together the pieces, an enlargement makes something bigger. And an example of that could be like in your science book where you look at cell diagrams. So cell diagrams, where they're taking something really, really tiny, like microscopically tiny that you can't really see with the human eye, and they're blowing it up to fit in your textbook so you can actually look at the different parts, like the mitochondria and the nucleus. Look at me knowing my science. I know. So this stuff is relating to what we did in Unit 5 with proportions. And remember what a proportion is? A proportion, actually I wanted to write this down here instead. A proportion, if you hopefully remember, is a fraction that is equal to a fraction. Right, in Unit 6 we did the percent over whole is equal to part, I mixed that up. Percent over 100 is equal to part over whole, that fraction equal to a fraction. So this relates to that proportions in Unit 5 because there's a constant of proportionality. It's been a hot minute since we've said that word. Constant of proportionality, remember, that's just a fancy name for your unit rate. That unit rate, per one, $5 per one book or whatever. So there's this constant unit rate that exists between the actual side of your image and the diagram, and their corresponding sides. That was a bit of a mess. Corresponding, if you don't know what corresponding means, that's a big word. Corresponding means like related. If two things are corresponding, they're kind of like related to each other. They're not exactly the same, but they're related to each other. So like if you're looking at a blueprint and you're looking at the roof of a house on a blueprint, you're going to compare that to the actual roof of the house. You're not going to compare the roof of the diagram to the floor of the diagram. So you're looking at the pieces that are related to each other, aka matching your sides up. Oh my God, my face itches today. Allergic to this school. Oh, it's fine. Everything's fine. Okay, so where did we leave off? Okay, so we're going to use a proportion to solve these problems, just like we did in Unit 5. the fraction equal to a fraction. And when we do that fraction is equal to a fraction, we're going to be using that cross multiplication to solve. Okay, so this time, instead of percent over whole, we're going to be using the words scale over actual is equal to scale over actual. And when we think about that actual, coming back up to our definition up here, that actual is just another name for that original. So when we're talking about the actionable, when we're talking about actual, that's just another fancy name for original. The actual figure that you're, making the diagram of. Keeping in mind that just like when we were setting up proportions in Unit 5, I'm going to be a bit of a stickler about making sure that you are writing your labels. You must write your labels. If you ask me questions, I am not going to give you any help unless you have labels on your fractions. And those labels are just going to be units of measurement, like feet and inches and so on and so forth.